The Central Bank of Nigeria has had a very busy 2021, combating pandemic effects, depreciation of buying power, and promoting economic growth, amongst other things. To navigate this economic phenomenon, the Apex Bank implemented various innovative policies to meet the CBN's goals. Amongst them are the extension of interest rate reductions on the CBN intervention facilities and the establishment of the Naira-for-Dollar scheme in acceptance of the NAFEX rate as the interbank benchmark rate, and the introduction of the e-Naira. Well, just to mention a few, with the CBN's primary policies aimed at enhancing and of course promoting the entire space, with the CBN's primary policies aimed at achieving goals such as price stability, moderating inflation, employment, and economic growth. Experts are of the view that the country's economy is yet to feel the impact of the monetary policy, of course, interventions all across board. Well, to give insights into this and other issues surrounding the economy for the first Monday of the new year, I have joining me live virtually from the United States of America is the chief economist at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Dr. Andrew Nevin. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for spending out your time to join us on the show. Happy New Year.
Total Happy New Year. It's great to be here with you.
Yes, I'm sure you listened to my introduction, and I was trying to speak around some of the moves by the central bank in the year 2021. And one of the notable issues that we would definitely want to talk about is the FX issue. But let's start with stability. How well do you think the CBN, the Apex Bank, how well do you think they have been able to manage price stability across board in 2021, before we go into some specific policies instituted by the Apex Bank?
Well, I mean, I think as we've always said, I mean, the CBN is the most important economic actor in the country. It's technically very proficient. I mean, I think from our viewpoint, it's done as well as it can in terms of managing it. I mean, the issue around inflation, I mean, we're all very concerned about inflation. As you rightly said at the beginning, inflation is a tax on the bottom of the pyramid, and it's highly destructive to people who don't have a lot of resources. So it's really, when we get to 17, 18% inflation, it's pernicious. I think the central bank with its monetary policy has done as well as possible. But when we look at what's really driving inflation, there are things that are outside of the control of the central bank. So if you think on a global basis, having 5-6% inflation in the UK, the United States, for example, a lot of that's driven by supply chain problems. Well, in our context, we know how difficult the supply chain is. We know the costs of doing business are high, but we've had something extra in the last 2 years, which is really challenging for us, which is the security situation in agriculture has made it very, very difficult. I mean, all of the interest in agriculture, I know many private sector actors doing amazing things in agriculture, and we should be seeing food prices go down with all of this effort. And the CBN, of course, led this over the last decade, really. But unfortunately, it's being counteracted by the security situation. So I think the CBN has done as well as possible in terms of the levers it can pull on inflation and monetary policy, but it's being counteracted by other things out of its control.
Let's now stay with issues around interventions now. Yes, we've seen interventions in the agricultural space, the Anchors Borrower scheme, and we see that a lot of comments, both positive and negative, are coming in from that space. Many saying that yes, some were able to get monies, some farmers can't even go to the farms, so they can't even use the money, so many of them are spending the monies right in their houses. Well, analysts have said this, but with all of these interventions, agriculture, creative space, pharmaceutical space, textile space, almost all of it, the central bank has been active in all of this. What would you say is the impact? Or are we still in the transition period?
Well, I mean, we still have a long way to go in every space, but I mean, I think the thing about what the central bank is doing is it puts these issues on the map. So if you take agriculture and you go back actually before Governor Emefiele, back to His Royal Highness Muhammadu Sanusi II when he was governor, I mean, no one in the country was interested in agriculture. No one was thinking about agriculture. So the CBN then started its intervention program in agriculture. And over the years, what you've seen now is a lot of private sector actors actually have discovered there's opportunities there. So I think that what the role the CBN plays is really like a catalyst on that. And I mean, as His Royal Highness said at the time, if not us, who? If not when? If not now, when? I mean, no one else is doing it. So if you take the creative industry as well, 4 or 5 years ago, we had a large creative industry, but no one was really talking about the opportunities, how it could be formalized, how the financial system could support it. So the central bank then stepped up and said, let's start doing this. And what you hope over time is, like we're seeing in agriculture, the private sector sees there are opportunities and takes over. So you don't want the CBN intervention to be permanent. But I think they played a very pivotal role in the country in making the country understand there are all these enormous opportunities out there. In an individual program, we all understand the circumstances in Nigerian diversions, difficulty of resources, difficulty getting repayment. We all understand that. But what they've done really well is now put things on the agenda, other industries on the agenda, as we've had to diversify away from oil and gas.
Oil and gas. We're going to talk about that because the PIA is also there and we see full implementation as we move into this. But I'd like you to react to this. The World Bank has again come up to say that Nigeria will be one of the countries with highest inflation rates globally in 2022. For me, I think this would happen because subsidy might have to go, and also subsidy on electricity. Maybe that's why inflation might jump higher. I don't know if you're thinking along that line, Dr. Nevin.
Well, I mean, I saw the headline with the World Bank, and I guess I've always said, I mean, the World Bank, they're friends of mine, but we need to plot our own path in Nigeria. I don't think the foil subsidy removal is going to make much difference to inflation. It's not a big part of the budget. It's not like some other countries. If you go to Indonesia 25 years ago, I think they removed subsidy, but it was on all the foil that people used. Here, it's just PMS. It's not what people use in their house to do cooking. It's not what they use for diesel, so for transport of goods on that way. So I don't think that's the core reason for inflation. As I said, the core reason for inflation is, one, the food insecurity is really creating a problem. I mean, I think 50% of Nigerians spend more than 50% of their income on food. So when food prices go up, inflation goes up, and we should be having an abundance of food, and food prices should be going down. But as I said earlier, in the present insecurity situation, that's not happening. And the second issue is just the ease of doing business. So if I had to contrast, for example, Nigeria with India, so two very large, complex countries. I mean, when you're in India, the price of goods and services is perhaps 1/4 of what it is in Nigeria, because they've gone through their own transitions, but right now it's quite streamlined to do business. Logistics is streamlined, infrastructure is strong, getting in and out through the port system is well understood, and there isn't much diversion in that. We still have those battles. So I think if we could focus on sort of the issues that PEBIC is doing, and we could focus on the insecurity, and of course I can't really comment on that other than to say I really pray for 2022 that the public, the federal government, the state governments, and all these state security apparatus make progress on this, because without it, we're never going to get inflation down if we continue to have problems in agriculture. So what's happening in agriculture, of course, is when farmers are insecure, they withdraw, they don't go out to the fields to plant, right? I mean, they're moving, what I'm told by experts in it is they're moving back close to the village, being as safe as they can, but they're planting much less. And in that circumstance, we're going to get inflation. So there's nothing the central bank can do to fix inflation unless we fix the security situation.
Very strategic one there. Government really needs to work on security because it's affecting all sectors of the economy. Now, our reserves are also doing fairly well. Well, thanks to the special drawing rights and, of course, Eurobonds raised towards the end of the year. What pattern do you see the reserves towing in 2022? Do you see us sustaining this, or do you think that we might still need support, maybe by borrowing more?
Well, I mean, I think with our reserves, again, I mean, the reserve management has been good. I mean, I think the fact that we are able to go to international markets what people should interpret that as is just people outside the country understand the enormous potential of the Nigerian economy and are still willing to support it. I mean, obviously we need to export more, but the fundamentals, those who follow the press a little bit again in agriculture, we have enormous potential in some of the agricultural crops like sesame, palm oil, for example, cassava. But we're having these logistical issues. Getting our stuff exported. Other countries in Africa are doing better. Kenya is a good example. Ghana is a good example with their agricultural exports. So we're kind of on the verge of this. We understand all of these issues, but if we want to do reserve management, I mean, we need to export more. And we've come out and said, well, in terms of physical goods, we need to really break down these bottlenecks in the agricultural sector because those are the goods where we have a comparative advantage, to use an economics term. But the other area where we're actually doing very well in exports, but we're not measuring properly, in my view, is services. I mean, if you think of what Nigeria can export, we have this enormous diaspora. We understand the power of the diaspora. But now with a not quite post-COVID, but a COVID world, there's so much remote work, and you hear stories every day of Nigerians, either as an individual or in a more organized fashion, of contributing to the world supply chains while they stay in Nigeria and earn FX. And we've really stressed that's the way to go. And of course, the service exports, it's things like business process outsourcing, coding, programmers. It's also Nollywood, music. It's also financial services. So if you look around Africa, you see the march of companies like Access, UBA, GT Bank, InterSwitch. I won't say Flutterwave because really, I guess with the purchase, Flutterwave is more like a U.S. company. But that's why we think that in terms of a balance of payments management, we have a tremendous opportunity. But the other thing I think that's really invisible to people, well, I'll use the word invisible because that's the economist term, is we have an enormous import of education and health. That is, people go abroad for these. And these flows are not well understood because what's happening is through the informal money exchange. I'll give you an example. There's 13,500 university students from Nigeria and Canada. Now, how are they getting the $400 or $500 million they need to support themselves there? Well, as far as I can tell, there doesn't seem to be any formal flow between Canada and Nigeria for Naira and Canadian dollar. What's happening is that the diaspora in Canada is sending Canadian dollars to the students in Canada, and then the students' parents in Nigeria are sending money to the parents or others in Nigeria to support them. So that flow never gets captured. But effectively, what's happening is that we are importing education from Canada. So one of the biggest policies I think that could help our demand manage our balance of payments is focus on health and education. I think that actually is a better sector, higher value added sector to focus on than, say, for example, manufacturing. I think it's going to be a long time before we can export manufacturing. We can export agriculture, but manufacturing beyond that, I don't see. So I would like to focus on reducing the import demand for education and health. And I think it would make an enormous difference to our economy.
Now, production is key to help us, improve exports. And you're talking around and that because when we are thinking of shoring up our foreign exchange, which is key at this time to be able to support this market that will continue to have this disparity. We've seen the Naira-for-Dollar scheme initiative. We've seen even the hammer on the BDCs. Finally, central bank stopped the weekly disbursement to the BDCs. But in your assessment, how well would you say all of these policies have lived up with its effect on the currency market?
Well, I think that if we go back to ERGP, I mean, we've always been of the view we need a unified exchange rate. And the reason we need a unified exchange rate is actually really highlighted now because we have the National Development Plan that's just come out. And the plan is very clear. 85% of the capital investment required in Nigeria needs to come from the private sector, only 15% from the public sector. So that unless the private sector comes to play, Nigeria can't be successful. Now, the problem is, I understand perfectly the CBN's desire to say, look, we have scarce dollars, we want to put it to the uses that we feel are best and deny it to other uses. But it's difficult for the CBN to make that decision. There's a lot of complexity. We get the round tripping that we understand. And we had the ERGP, which said we were moving to market-determined exchange rates. So we were on that path. gets disrupted by oil plunging to $20, the COVID disruption on that. But our view, it needs to be back on that path, because we're not going to get private sector investment at that level that's required unless people have a really clear, simple exchange rate mechanism. And they can come in, they can go out, they know the price, there's always a market. It's very, very difficult right now in this situation. So I think that something like the dollar for e-Naira or Naira-for-Dollar scheme is helpful, again, to highlight the value of the diaspora remittances. But until we get to that fully flexible exchange rate, I think we're going to continue to struggle. We're such an open economy. We have such a big diaspora. We have so many people educated abroad. We have a demand for things we can't produce ourselves at the current time, and probably not for quite a time. So as such an open economy, we need to have that flexibility in exchange rate. But I think I read right, there was a NAFEX evaluation, I may be wrong, to 435. Inevitably, a little bit like the foil subsidy, it was a long process, foil subsidies disappearing. Inevitably, we're going to come to a unified exchange rate. And I think that one of the things that's going to help drive it is the e-Naira, because of course, I mean, the e-Naira, one of the major use cases, perhaps the most valuable use case to the country in the medium term, is that it allows the diaspora to send dollars to Nigeria really easily. I mean, either the CBN or any bank can set up a website. It's instant. It shows up instantly in the e-Naira wallet of the recipient in Nigeria. It's really an incredible innovation. But no diaspora member is going to send that unless it's at essentially what is today the parallel rate. So until there's a unification of the rate, we're not going to get that benefit. So I suspect that over the next 2022, the central bank's going to have to grapple with this issue a little more seriously as we come out of COVID. And again, we'll see steps towards unifying the exchange rate.
Can we wrap up in 1 minute? Generally, what's your projection for the new year, economically?
No, look, I mean, I've said this in other forum. I'm very optimistic about Nigeria. If I compare to what, from 5 or 6 years ago, or the 13 years I've been here, I think we're in better shape on many, many dimensions. I mean, there's so much activity around the country. States are doing so many things. This focus on the cultural industries, on the ICT, on the service industries, on agriculture is really powerful. It's where we should be. And there's a level of professionalism. I mean, people may be aware I've moved from Lagos to Abuja. I really am impressed with the quality of so many of the NDAs that I work with, and the level of professionalism. PEBEC just celebrated its 5th anniversary. Dr. Jamoke is a national heroine. NIPC, Yawanda just stepped down, but they've got fantastic momentum. DMO is an example, SEC is an example, NICOM is an example of MDAs that are really doing the right thing. So I'm really optimistic, actually, as we come into this year. The debates are around the right issues. We have a debate about the foil subsidy. We have a debate about the exchange rate. The quality of that debate is so much higher than 4 or 5 years ago on that. So I'm optimistic. Obviously, it's going to be complex in an election year, really critical how the election unfolds, who becomes the next president and vice president of the Federation. But it's just, I'm more optimistic than I've ever been in 13 years.
Well, it's on that optimistic note. That's what we're going to sign out. Thank you so much. I've been speaking to the Chief Economist, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Dr. Andrew Nevin, who joined me live from the United States of America via Zoom. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Nevin. Have a great 2022. Fruitful one.
Thank you, Tola.